Caedrel.
You have to stay strong.
It's okay.
It's gonna be okay.
Believe in yourself.
You can do it. You've made it now.
You've made it.
Don't fall back into the past.
You can do this,
Don't
Caedrel.
let the darkness consume you,
Don't let it
Caedrel.
consume you.
You're a caster now.
You've grown.
You're so much better.
Hey,
than
round
you.
of applause.
Round of applause. Everybody for Caedrel
Come on.
for making.
You've done it.
You've made playoffs.
Look at you.
You know what?
Look.
It's a visual representation. Look, there you are.
I didn't go inside.
You didn't go inside.
Oh, no.
Did they block you at the door?
No, Karina just said, "Stand outside. I'll take a picture because you made it." And then when I got home, I realized
You never went
I
inside.
never went inside.
But you can look from the outside in.
Do you think that was a subconscious representation of the fact that you don't think that you're worthy in this case for the playoff
No,
cafe?
I just didn't want a coffee.
Oh,
Yeah, I had
that's
to go
fine.
home.
So that just sums up your career.
I got it. You could have gone to playoffs. You just never wanted a quote unquote
A coffee.
For context, by the way,
I
and
get
again,
it now.
we
It
do-
all makes sense.
So sorry again, podcast land friends. There's a photo that Mark took. You can check it out on his Twitter of him standing in front of a cafe in an airport. I think that's named Playoff. So that's the image that we're riffing on right now. But
Yeah, good times.
I'm sorry we didn't bring you along with us initially, but
Good times.
it's okay, man. One day you'll be ready to go in and get the coffee. One day.
One day I'll get a coffee and a bagel while I'm there.
One day we'll stop making these jokes, but when that day comes,
No,
I
I
have
think
no
the playoff
idea.
joke said no. I think this is
the
the last one. Like
Is it?
the
I
nails
think-
in the coffin. This is the last. Boom.
I would say that, and I'm sorry to say this, but I think the defining characteristic of your pro career was not making playoffs, and we'll have to keep bringing it up. Just like Deficio was bad. That's the thing that we
He
brought
was an
up.
army one trick.
And
We
he-
brought that up. And Zyra too. He only played those champions.
True.
He often referred to his Nami KDA being one of the best in the league.
The fish show was a Nami one trick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's what was meta.
I'm
when
not
he was
even
playing.
kidding. Nami Zyra were the two champions he played back then. And
The
what?
Fishio, man. What is this? Nami OTP.
Yeah.
Look, man.
Oh my god.
There's a
Babus
dark
would
side
approve,
to
dude.
Deficio.
Babus would approve if it was a certain Nami skin. He would approve.
Oh my
Right, so is this the part of the podcast where we now talk about Black Clover?
No.
Betty. I want you to know that I'm so glad that you're here. But I will murder you on camera.
I don't need to do that. The Black Clover plans will do that.
Everyone will say, "Oh no, stop!" All right, hello, welcome to Euphoria. This long rambly intro was for kicks. We're getting back into the swing of things. This is our first day back at work proper. We just had the break week. This is season 8, episode 10. I'm your host, Caedrel and Drakos. If you haven't been able to tell so far, Caedrel and Vedius are here with me. And
The
we're gonna-
banter bus
Oh, there he
boys.
is.
the banter bus boys.
You're looking you're like 5'5". What sort of joke is that?
I'm not 5'5".
Yeah, you
What
are.
is this?
I
It's
see
a-
you
it's
wearing
actually-
stilts
Betty, I'm
today.
taller
It was-
than you.
No, you're not,
Yes,
mate.
I'm taller
no,
than you,
you're
Betty.
not.
Dude, Betty.
Do you want to compare
Should I
right
stand
now?
up right now?
Oh no!
Back to
All right,
back.
hold on, back to back. We're comparing height. Betty's taller than you, dude.
He's
He's slightly tiny.
Let's go. I'm standing straight.
Also, you're wearing those Balenciagas or whatever, or what are they? What are they?
I'm wearing Ultra
Get in front of your
Boost.
microphone. You are wearing shorter shoes. You're wearing taller shoes, and you're still slightly shorter than him.
I'm not wearing taller shoes.
Those shoes are basically platforms.
Okay, what if we
my
take the
dude.
shoes off?
No, focus.
stop.
Yeah, it's been
Focus.
decided.
I'll give you. We can try again at the end of the show, but the people do not need to literally. Because imagine again, YouTube people are like, ha ha ha. Podcast people are like, what the
Podcasters.
hell are these idiots doing? These
So for
idiots
those on the podcast,
are available.
Okay, well, we'll
We
give them
just
context. Me and
realized-
Vedius just stood next to each other. I
and
was
what we
slightly
realized,
taller.
is
Guys.
that I am Legolas and he is Gimli in this equation. Meanwhile, the king is trying to return to his throne and trying to get the podcast back on track. So playoffs,
I'll
let's
take
go.
Aragorn. You fuck yeah. All right, you know that metaphor worked out. Anyway, we're available
go
YouTube,
home.
Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud. We had a break week. It's a little bit crazy. We're coming back. We got three matches this week. Misfits versus Rogue, G2 versus Mad Lions, Vitality versus Fnatic. We're going to talk about all of them today, and then we're going to be doing our overall predictions for the playoffs. Why, you ask? Why would we do this before there's any context or playoff form to be witnessed? Because we make clickbait here, people. It's what we do.
If you want clickbait, we've got some juicy stuff for you at the end. We've got some really good stuff.
We're going to find out who's actually taller without shoes.
No, because we can bring up LCK because Caedrel had some spicy tweets.
No, you know,
last
the thing
week.
is, I remember I was watching some LCK games and there was a lot of really int plays going on,
Yep.
right? And I was like, wow, LCK, you're definitely inting. And then I just realized to myself, wait, we've had teams throw 10k gold lead to the single objective. So we're not much better.
Oh,
that's
see,
what I
he's
started to realize.
backpedaling now. He's
No,
backpedaling.
backpedaling.
He's
Okay,
backpedaling.
no.
Drama for end of the podcast.
Thank you.
Stick around.
Betty, you're on it today, dude. I like this. You are shilling hard, and I appreciate it. All right, Caedrel,
Yeah.
and we're bringing it. We're deep breath.
Playoffs.
I was gonna we're going to have an entire segment where we talked about the break week, but I think we just used all of our time on
skip.
whatever the hell this is.
Let's get into the matchup, Drakos. I'm ready. I'm ready to talk about League of Legends.
So how it's going to work is we're going to talk about each of these 3 matchups. To start, I would like one person to give an elevator pitch or a TLDR, essentially 60 seconds where you get to rant about this matchup.
Get the stopwatch out. Come on.
Okay, all right. So you are going to start. I'm getting the stop timer.
Okay.
Open in a Google tab, stopwatch.
So wait, is he... Okay. I'm just saying who's going to win this, yeah?
You say... Who's going to win this?
And why?
You basically give us the oversimplified version of what you think this matchup is going to be in 60 seconds, and that is the starting point for our discussion on Misfits versus Rogue.
All right,
Are you ready?
Misfits versus
Giving
Rogue.
him the easy one, okay.
Well, he kind of just jumped up to take it.
Here we go.
You're the
No,
guest, so you
it's
can
fine.
pick
Let's
from
go.
the remaining 2. I'll
Give
time
him
it.
the easy one. It's fine. He needs this.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Okay, Misfits versus Rogue. I'll start off by saying I think Rogue's going to win. Okay, however, I do think that Misfits' strong point is their mid-jungle, VTO and Razork, and I think that Larson and Inspired also a very big strong point for Rogue, but I think they're comparable in a way. I think both mid-jungles are almost at the same level where you can make an argument for both of them as to who's going to be the better mid-jungle for their team specifically, where you have one side where Misfits' mid-jungle plays towards top, inherit, right? But on the other side, you've got Odoamne, who's the weak side king, the weak side machine, whatever you want to call it. He'll win lane without jungle resources, so he'll be fine. So although both mid-jungles might have good games, and I think that both mid-jungles can contest against each other, I think side lane diff is just where it's going to come in. Odoamne will be able to handle here it pretty easily. He can manage his lane well, despite where jungle is, and Rogue will get resources on the side of the map. And then you look at bot lane matchup. I think Rogue's bot lane, one of the best bot lanes in the league, in lane especially. I think they're going to win out in lane against Misfits. So I think in the early game, both these teams are early game teams, and I think Rogue's just a better version.
Sick. 2 seconds to spare. All right, a lot to unpack there.
That was the most
we'll do that.
timid elevator pitch I've ever heard.
Yeah, I'm gonna say if this
What
was
do you mean
if this was
timid?
if this was
I would have said like Rogue about to slap Misfits into the ground. Did about an
Yeah.
easy 3-0 like that. I was kind of like
we learn. We'll get better. We'll get more
Dude, I
aggressive.
swear,
with each
I've been on
one.
the podcast 10 minutes. I'm getting bullied, man.
Betty is here, and he does like to bully you.
it's true. Don't worry, I'll turn to Drakos at some point.
It is a strategy.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear your elevator pitch for the next matchup.
Well, and I was just thinking,
We'll
because
be
He's
challenging.
the next matchup is G2 versus Mad, I guess. And he's gonna be like, I think this team's gonna bam, 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 and I can't wait to hear it.
yeah, it's gonna pop. If only there was like another format where we could have just talked about both teams for like 3 minutes or something in a way that was like really aggressive. That would be cool. Maybe
That would
not.
be cool.
Maybe that would be cool.
Who knows?
Okay, we'll do 2 more of those, and then we'll end the podcast, and we'll go back to the height challenges. No, we're kidding. We're going to talk more. Okay, so Misfits versus Rogue. I think I'll kick off, and I'll say that, yeah, overall, I agree. I think Rogue are the very clear favorites here. I think Misfits... I feel about Misfits to me are like, have been for the longest time as an organization, and now as a team, they're like the one-hit wonder. Like, do you guys remember Gautier? Somebody that I used to know. What the hell is Gautier doing anymore? Do you have any idea? I don't. No freaking clue. What has Misfits done since 2017? Nothing.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Misfits is Gautier.
Wow,
They had a banger, and I loved it. But until
So you think this is not the second hit wonder?
I mean, maybe Gautier has a new song, but do you
Come
know
back,
what it's
the new
called?
album.
No. So until it shows up on a TikTok trend, I'm going to doubt it too. You know what I mean? So if they win here, then hell yeah, baby, Gautier's back. But up until that point, I'm not convinced.
So if they win, you're jumping on the hype train?
I mean, if they beat Rogue, hell yeah. I mean,
If they beat Rogue, they're going to Worlds, man.
it's actually true. Oh yeah. So context here, by the way, in the upper bracket, we're only sending 3 seeds. So
To Worlds.
To Worlds. So previously, actually, if you were number 1, I think you were guaranteed to get to Worlds no matter what, even if you hadn't played a single game.
Because the worst you could get was 4th seed.
And again, this format was designed for 3 seeds, not for 4. So that was kind of not an oversight, but not something we anticipated when this format was made.
Yeah, we weren't given 4 seeds when we originally planned this.
Yeah.
Thing,
So
for sure.
if you win your first best of 5 in the upper bracket as the top 4 team, you are guaranteed a spot at Worlds. The worst you can finish is 3rd, and that would guarantee you the final spot. So cool stuff, big stakes if Misfits can make the upset happen. But on the analysis, not one-hit wonder front,
Yeah.
I think that the side lanes are a perfect thing to talk about. Because mid-jungle, while I think you are a clown for saying that VTO Razork can match Inspired Larson.
How can you say it's a clown take? VTO and Razork. I'll give you some stats to back it up in a sense, right?
This is great.
Razork,
is it going to be how many key player of the games VTO has won? Because that's the only place that he's better than Larson, dude.
Razork has a 78% KP, VTO has 74, right? So obviously they play from mid lane to side lanes, right?
Yep.
They're unlocking their mid jungle to play for top or bot. Whereas if you look at the other side, Rogue for context or stats, Larson 59% KP, Inspired 60%, whereas Rogue play from bot and top to mid, right? So they're playing side lanes to mid, and Misfits is playing mid to side lanes. And I think mid to side lanes is a good play, but that's to juggle your side lanes to get them to the early game to
I don't
mid
know
game.
if I agree with that.
And I think Rogue is just much better winning side laners. Their mid jungle, I think you could compare Razork and VTO, but I think that side lanes.
Just keep it on mid jungle.
No, I gotta
Stop
speak now.
branching
I
the
have to-
discussion. Okay, go.
So Rogue Misfits. First of all, I think this is really one-sided for Rogue, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because I think that Larson right now, I think you can make an argument for best performing mid at the end of the regular season. I think that his entire split has not been the best, obviously. And he's also been very vocal about that. But he also said that a lot of the criticism that he got at the beginning, he thought was very warranted, but it also helped him get a lot better. So in the second half, he was playing insane. His Twisted Fate is still undefeated throughout his entire career. I think he's sitting at 6-0, 7-0 on that champion now. But I think that so that's why I struggle to compare him to VTO, because I do not think that VTO has the same lane dominance as Larson. If you want to talk about in terms of play style, sure. But I also think that you can't sit there and say that Rogue always play through sides into mid. I don't think that's true, because especially when like Twisted Fate is one of his go-to champions. Like,
I mean, TF's an exception. It's a global champ, right?
Yeah.
So of course you can play from mid to sides with that global.
Yeah,
right?
but like that's why I also don't think that like Rogue have a specific play style. I think that they're extremely flexible, and that I think is the biggest reason why they should smash Misfits.
Rogue has three lanes and jungle that you can use to carry a game.
Yes.
Whereas Misfits, I think, have mid jungle and arguably top if he gets resources.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the big thing here, to me, looking at this just as like a very top-down perspective, is when I look at these teams, as highlighted, Rogue are flexible, but Misfits are very Razork reliant.
Yes.
Like, they put this man on an
100%
early game
agree.
But I do
champion.
think VTO is kind of underrated. I think VTO's had an amazing split.
I think VTO's
Hang on,
been
hang
very...
on.
Oh,
How is he underrated?
because
Rate the
you
mid
said-
laners. Rate the mid laners right now from 1 to 5.
1 to 6 in the playoffs. Who's the best mid laner player?
It's really hard. You think Larson's the best mid laner?
No,
in playoffs?
I think that it would be Caps, Larson,
Hang on.
Humanoid.
I think it would be Humanoid first,
That's also fine.
and then maybe Larson,
Also
and then
fine.
Caps VTO debatable.
Do you think Caps V2 is debatable?
I think Niski's had a great split. I think all the mids are really good. I think ranking them 1 to 5 is very difficult, actually.
Sure, but I don't think that you can sit there and say that VTO is underrated when I think that the top 3 mids, in my opinion,
I think
have
it's
had
just
a
the
better
way that you
split than
phrased it
him.
earlier, where you were like, Larson, I think is just much better. And I think...
I do think he's much better
I
than
don't
VTO.
think he's much better. I think VTO is really good.
I think that he's a much better laner than he is, and I think that his team fighting is
I think
also
here's-
much better.
It's important to understand here. Caedrel, is this a situation where, and again, it's always hard to analyze anything in isolation. Is this like, are you... Because the way you presented it first made it sound like it was 50-50. Like the mid-jungle matchup just wasn't at that as important.
I think in isolation, Inspired's the best jungle in the league. 100%.
Sure. Yeah,
right?
Sure.
Absolutely.
I
we all
think
agree.
Larson is a really good laner.
Yep.
I
Right.
think that Razork is arguably our second best jungle in the league. So I
That's
think
fair.
jungle is very...
Yeah.
It's not even, but it's comparable.
No, I think that's
And
fair.
I think that VTO brings different things to Larson where you can play through mid, right? I
Sure.
think Larson's more of like a pick me a mage, I'll be safe.
Yeah. Ultimately.
And like,
No,
I just want to say, like,
yeah.
I don't think that, to like clarify, I think that I agree with you in terms of how Misfits play. Like, Razork playing through mids, the fact that those two are a large part of where a lot of the early kills come from, that all makes sense. But that's also, I think, the biggest problem. And that if they don't learn or showcase more styles than just playing through mids and having this over-reliance on Razork, then I think that they are forever going to be struggling against the top teams, because I think that they're just not flexible enough. On an individual level, I think you can make an argument. Like, I don't think Kobe's had a bad split at all. I think Kobe's actually like really stood out in a lot of situations that have really been clutch and important for his team. And I think that when you look at Vander, he's also super reliable. But I just don't think the team has showcased a wide range of styles of flexibility. And like, you can even, if you go really deep into it, you could probably even like pick apart their champion pool and like their approach to champions that they prioritize too. So that's why I think that this is going to be a really difficult matchup for Misfits. I think that Rogue should be heavy favorites, and I think that the stylistically, like, Rogue is just a one-sided matchup.
Contextually, when we look back at the 2 times these teams have played each other, now one game was this most recent game was very difficult for them. This was the Kabe on Aphelios perma die unplayable against the Hecarim Nocturne.
Yep.
So I'm not going to reference that game because that was
I mean, they actually were very comparable. That was a close game.
That
a
was
close game.
Reasonably close for a while, and then at a certain point, their composition just
that was a bit of a draft iffy.
But if you remember the Crowstorm game, the week 2 game, the medic sick murder.
That was a lot
call.
of throws though, both back and forth.
Back and forth. Hansama overextending on a side lane, Misfits smartly punishing, turning that into a Baron, and then turning another advantage into Infernal Soul, and subsequently a second Baron. Like, when Misfits are given opportunities.
But also, just sorry to interrupt you. The first game you just mentioned, right, where what was it? I think it was Hans was playing Ziggs.
Yeah, Hans was Ziggs. Ziggs Nautilus
They
bot
played
lane.
this comp. Misfits got Baron in that game.
Yeah,
it was a close
They made
game.
a pick, they got a Baron, right?
It was a really
I think
close
we're in
game.
agreement that Rogue's probably gonna stomp this series.
Yeah.
But I think there's an argument where Misfits will do decently well.
Misfits is not a bad team.
Yeah.
I think that they've showcased that.
Yeah.
It's just the problem is I think that like a lot of their early game is very reliant on Razork, and we saw in the recent weeks that if you shut Razork down, Misfits don't have an early game at all, and often that they draft towards like Tristana Braum is like one of the Tristana Alistair, Aphelios Braum is like their go-to bot lane, so they have like some late game insurance that they often rely on, and then usually VTOs on something like Syndra, so there's always some late game damage. I think that like their team fighting has showcased that it can be pretty good, but I just don't think that's enough. Is my problem.
I think
Misfits.
You never know. The Rogue 20 to 30 minute curse could bite them in the butt 3 games in a row.
I mean, certainly. Well, one thing
Because I think that's something. Sorry, I think that's definitely something to talk about.
The Rogue issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
Because
it's fair.
it's so abundant. It
Yep.
happens so goddamn often that it's like, I know it's a meme, and in Korea they've made this meme. That
No,
actually
I mean,
can't
like
go
I
out.
talked about on the analyst desk too. I thought I really wanted to draw attention to it because this isn't the first time we've seen it. Last splits, that's why they lost the final. Like,
explain, elaborate for the people at home. Elaborate what you mean by the 20 to 30.
Yeah, so
curse.
Rogue has an amazing early game. You know, they get 4 to 5k gold leads in the first 15 to 20 minutes, but then for some reason, someone gets caught on side. Even that Misfits game, Hans gets caught in mid by a bubble. They lose Nash, they lose Drakes. I don't know if they're just. I mean, they do play a lot of early game comps with Kalista and stuff like this, and things like TF to make sure that they can get their sides rolling or whatever it can be. But I think that even if you play an early game comp and you get an early game lead, you shouldn't be throwing these games away like that. Like the Vitality game, just going top, Lucian's pushing top.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to try and help him to try and take this top tier 2. For no reason, you're taking a 5v5 and then just getting aced in such a messy fight where Odoamne is trying to fight with Ken in 1v3, trying to dive them on the tower, Larson trying to kite back. There's TPs everywhere. It's just really, really messy.
Freddie talks about it being like a loss of focus where the team gets so far ahead. I think 6 or 7k specifically was the gold threshold that he mentioned. Like every time we get to this threshold, it's like we just lose all focus and we stop concentrating and we just start like memeing because like we think the game is unlosable and then we lose the game. So it was pretty interesting hearing that from Freddie because focus seems to be a word that they all use quite a lot. Like Larson talked a lot about it during the beginning of the split and Freddie now at the end of the split. And like maybe Caedrel, you can give some more insight on this, like because obviously we haven't been in that position, but have you ever been in those positions where you're so far ahead that you feel the game is unlosable?
I never made playoffs.
No, but you've been in pro games still, where you've been so far ahead where you feel like the game is unlosable, and then you've actually made really dumb mistakes.
It's a very easy answer because I think that it comes down to like what's the next objective is a question you'll always ask your team as a pro team. It's like what's the next objective? In the early game, it's really easy. Dragons, heralds, dives, tier 1s. Once all tier 1s are down, herald's gone, and Baron's up. And you've got like Drake's like a 3-minute timer. You ask yourself, what's the next objective? You're going to overextend for tier 2s. You're going to overextend for deep vision for Baron. Maybe you're even going to force a Baron for no reason to try and get a turn potentially, if you're ahead. So 3 very risky plays. And that just comes down to how the game functions. And I think that's one of the big reasons why they could throw.
I mean, we've seen this a lot when we have teams that are very, very dominant early game. There's almost always just this lull in a pro game where it's like, well, you've taken what you can.
Yep.
So unless the enemy team like mispositions and you just get to dive somebody who's in the wrong place, like unless the enemy team messes up, the game just slows down significantly. So I don't have that pro experience. I can say that I would probably get bored too. I'm a giga-fed Kalista. I want to kill people. I don't want to wait while that guy farms. Like, screw that.
It comes down to patience, kind of, because tier 1s are very easy to take. There's very easy ways to take tier 1 towers where it's like, oh, we can take Herald. We can Herald mid. Mid tower dies, for example, and then our mid laner can move bot. Your bot lane has to back off. Tier 1 bot's going to die now as well, right? So, or you can use TPs to dive them. So it's very easy to do these things. But tier 2s, really hard to dive, really hard to set up, really hard to hit because you can get flanked so easily. So when all tier 1s are down and you're trying to play for tier 2s and you're trying to force a Baron, it's very, very difficult to snowball the game to the point where you can just make that play and crack the game open. Even when you're ahead 4k gold, the game will slow down a lot. You're completely right. There'll be a lull state. And that's where teams have to identify risk versus reward and what their real win condition is.
Yeah, I think a hard place to play. But the thing I want to shift our attention to, because I think the thing that we're pretty universally aligned on, and I'd love to get a little bit more into, is talking specifically about the side lane matchups. Because it feels like outside of the Rogue 20 to 30 minute throws, feels pretty aligned that this is a very Rogue favored game. And the fact that we're talking about something that Rogue is doing as the potential point of weakness that would allow Misfits to win feels like Misfits aren't necessarily super in control of their own destiny in this series.
Right.
Which comes back to the side lane discussion. Now, I'm a Herit fan, I'll be honest, but I have no delusions when it comes to how he will stack up against Ottawamne, because the last time we saw it, he got greedy going for a solo kill and died. You know what I mean? And he's also had games where he's gotten the Gwen the first time that they played. He did fine. But Gwen was OP on that patch. He did get some kills when Ottawamne spent that 2-week period as Nocturne sprinting into Gwens. Yeah. Because apparently it takes 4 stage games before you figure out how much that champion can do with 2 items. I don't know. She's not a problem anymore, though, so not concerned. But I just don't... That doesn't feel like... Even if that is at best for Misfits, I think even. So top... But bottom on the other side, it's like Hansama and Trimby kill people every game. And Kabi and Vander have been solid, but solid is the word that I would use from them. They've had good games. They've had okay games. I never feel like they're super griefing it. I never feel like they're really crazy popping off unless it's some late game skirmishes.
What's the question here, Drakos? What's the question?
This is how I'm feeling. I want us to talk more about these side lanes. I agree that the side lanes are weak, and I just feel like Rogue side lanes can pop off and show us more, whereas at best I feel like Misfit side lanes are chilling. What's your guys' reads more in depth here on the side lanes?
Well, the thing about Misfit's bot lane is like they're just like, I don't know how to best describe it. They're like a neutral.
Like a role player,
You can't kill that bot lane, or you shouldn't be able to. Because it's just like, that's just how that bot lane functions. They are inherently the weak side bot lane of the league. Like, it's pretty crazy because when you look at the teams, which is Rogue have a history of playing towards their bot side.
Yep.
Mad also, not to the same degree, but also have a bit of a history playing towards their bot side, or at least they've shown to. G2, they don't inherently, but they do play a lot towards their bot side. Fnatic play heavily towards their bot side. And then Vitality is probably the only other weak side bot lane in playoffs. But that's just what Corby and Vander are. And like, to me, I think that they don't have to be. I think you can funnel resources into them, and perhaps they should be given a little bit more just to see, like, especially if you can shut Hans and Trimby down. That's a great thing to have as an option. But the truth is, like, regardless of their individual skill, I think that the team just doesn't play around them, which is a large part of why I think that we never really get to see what they're truly capable of, in my opinion.
But at the same time, we've literally, like, a lot of the bot lanes you mentioned have had games where they've had literally 0 jungle attention and they're getting 2v2 kills in lane.
Yeah, of course.
And that's the thing that I see that's missing for Kabi and Vander. Like, yes, if you play around them, they're actually set up
But
to
they
shine.
also play stuff like Aphelios Braum.
Sure. Pick ban certainly limits them to a certain degree.
Like, I can't think of the last time that they played something like... when was the last time they played Callista Leona, for example?
I do think that Misfits have a small upper hand just at how the game works right now, where I think that if you ban Callista out, it's really hard to play for bot lane unless they get Varus. So if they can deny these 2 picks... The way the game works right now, basically, is supports will roam out of lane level 4, level 5, the top side. Top laners will be playing 1v1, and there'll be a 3v3 around mid for the first 7 or 8 minutes of the game for Herald. Until Herald's dead, then they'll come back to lane for support. So the only real way you're going to get 2v2 killed is in the first 4 to 5 levels of the game. So if they don't do that, then they're fine. If they just get rid of these lane oppressive champions like Callista and Varus, maybe Draven as well. They might have to be careful for that.
Maybe.
And just leave ADs to farm bot, then they're out of lane, right? And now supports can move towards top side and it'll be a 3v3. So you don't actually have to worry about the lane phase itself. So as much as the side lanes will struggle, there's a world for Misfits where just forcing Herald and forcing top side will get them out of bot lane, for example.
And based on what we saw in some of the LPL series, Ashe is coming back in what could be a very big way. And obviously one of the characters that auto wins lane, you know, for the most part, outside of some certain
matches.
matches.
Famous for his Ashe too.
Certainly, both sides would be comfortable on it, but also a champion that can impact other lanes in a big way. Hawkshot, certainly a valuable utility skill, and you feel like if that is the meta, very annoying. If that is the meta, then, you know, Misfits having a weak bot side isn't really super consequential, because
essentially,
if the meta is Jhin Ashe, no one's playing the bot anyway. They're going literally anywhere else.
But ultimately, like, I just don't think that this game is determined by, like, the sides. I ultimately think that when Caedrel introduced it at the start, the mid jungle is going to be the most influential factor. And, like, while I think that he believes it's comparable, I don't. I think it's super one-sided. I think that Inspired Larson is just much better than the duo of Razork Vito. And I think that duo will just have the upper hand.
think the important thing to note is, like, I think Freddie said it in an interview, or Larson said it in an interview about Freddie. I was listening to it. I don't know where it was, but he said something about Freddie. He's like, his coaching philosophy is he wants 3 prio lanes. Every single time he wants prio over everything.
Wow, who could have guessed?
Right? Who could have guessed, right? So they're going to have pushing lanes, right? You can see it in their drafts. Jace, Lucian mid, Kennen top, Kalista lanes, right? That's 3 pushing lanes. So I think that Misfits drafts the opposite, where they're going to pick Alistar every game bot. Mm-hmm. You can't get prio bot. They're going to pick, I don't know, like a Gwen top or something, which is going to get pushed in against a range champion, whatever it is. So I think that mid jungle is comparable in a sense where in a vacuum, I think that both these mid jungles are really, really good. And I think that, I would say obviously Inspired Larson slightly favored, but I think VT or Razork are fantastic as well. So comparable in a sense. Side lanes, I think much different story. And especially when you factor in the fact that both side lanes are slightly better, I would say as well, in lane as well. And we'll have pushing lanes from the draft, which we expect from Rogue. How can mid jungle ever play in a vacuum, right? When both side lanes are just getting absolutely pounded, pushed in all game. So I think that Misfits probably going to lose. If I was to predict this series, I'd say at best 3-1 for Rogue. Misfits maybe could pick up a game. I think we all agree that Rogue's probably just going to take the series.
Yes. So you feel? Do you agree with that assessment? Kind of to summarize. So
I think it's a really good assessment. Yeah.
Mid jungle can be as close as you want it to be, but if your side lanes are getting their shit kicked in, it's just never going to be the isolated 2v2.
So I think that Misfits have a lot of options. They can identify this, they can see this, and they can read this. They've had weeks to prepare, and I think you can take many different approaches to it. You can either try to shut down those prio lanes by just through the draft itself, or you can match things at outscale in a sense where, I don't know if he picks...
Which is what I expect them to do, because often when they challenged Rogue, it's because they had better late game options, and they could actually win through fighting. And I think that is one of their big strengths. Like, you only have to look back at like VTO last split, like the number of Silas plays that he made, and like Corbe this split with his Zaya. Like, individually, each of them have made really insane plays in a 5v5. So like, they're a good team, and that's important. But the truth is that I think that Rogue is just that much better of a team, and that's also what I expect of Rogue. And they will likely be one of our world's representatives. That's just what I expect.
Yeah, I mean, you're going up against the best performing team from the regular season, arguably the strongest team coming out of the regular season in terms of individual performance, because obviously best of one record isn't the only indicator for how strong a team is. I think in general, it would be crazy not to have Rogue as favorites. If you have different opinions at home, feel free to share them with us.
And also just to round out the analysis in a sense where you have these pushing side lanes, gives you more options. If you have pushing side lane, you can dive side lanes. If you have pushing side lanes, you can move towards mid. And if you're playing things like Volibear in jungle as Razork, I've had it so many times where I'm jungling with an early game jungle like Volibear or Lee Sin or Olaf, whatever it is, and I have to get an early game lead. All lanes are getting pushed in. The only thing you can realistically do is try to punish overextensions, and Rogue don't really do that in the early game. They do it in the mid game. So early game
also
rough.
Literally Razork played it against Rogue the last time they played, and he was in the wrong place one time, and it cost Misfits everything, right? Like, putting that early game pressure on Razork, I think it is the right choice. It's like, God dang, Razork, like, you're taking like the series on your shoulder.
And I remember, I don't know if it was last split or last year even, just one game stands out to me where it's like Rogue had all these pushing lanes, but G2 found ganks onto them, and then all these pushing lanes lost their push with like Caitlyn and Gnar top, and then it was over. So yes, these 3 pushing lanes will always be great, but if you can find a way to punish them and they don't get the push anymore, their early game is just completely negated.
Yeah, I think that it's a hard thing to do. We've heard, like, Reckless said that Rogue is the team that he would like to play against the least because of that. Because you can call it by the book or whatever, and a lot of teams will call that a weakness, especially when it comes to playing teams internationally. But when you're playing it in playoffs, you have to be the one to break the book, the one to upset the apple cart. And sitting there and scaling, if that is Misfit's best option, doesn't feel like upsetting the apple cart. It feels like, hold on and survive, baby. We'll see what we can do. So, easy to say for now, for all 3 of us. Rogue clear favorites here. Maybe Misfits can make the upset. If they do, it'll be monumental. It'll be the second hit. It'll be somebody that I used to know version 2. But we'll see what happens. That is our first match on Friday. Second match on Saturday. We get to cast this one. So everything. Tricast, baby.
Oh, it says 3, is it?
Yeah, G2 versus Mad Lions. Do you want to go or do you want me to go?
Oh, you mean the 60-second thing?
You get 60 seconds. You can summarize the match.
I think this is the hardest one.
It probably is the hardest one.
It is the hardest
one. So you can do it, yeah, sure.
I was so ready. I was just going to scream for 60 seconds for Fnatic Vitality. Okay, give me... All right. I was really hoping you were going to take this one.
Do you want me to take this one?
I mean, it would make my life easier, yes.
I mean, that's not the question.
Okay, I'll get my own timer. Damn. All right. 3 for myself, 2, 1. All right, this is a matchup of intangibles, mostly because Mad Lions looked sketchy as hell in the final weeks. They have a lot of fantastic individual players, and they always seem to show up in playoffs. But that said, we're still waiting for the aforementioned peak in playoffs that Mac has been spending all of his time talking about this entire season. They're a team that's been struggling. That said, Armut has been stepping up. In their most recent match, he did solo kill Wonder on the GP, and while they were absolutely torn to pieces, I imagine a single TF ban will shut down most of what G2 were trying to do with a composition like that. I remain relatively unconvinced of Reckless's newfound flexibility on champions, and so I expect this to be probably one of the closest, if not the closest series that we will see for the vast majority of playoffs. That said, I do think that G2 are the relative favorites because recently we have seen more consistency from this team than we have seen from the Mad Lions. But that said, the last time they played, we saw about an utter collapse of G2. Remember, this was the Reckless Karma series in the midst of an entirely non-Karma meta. So overall, what I will say is that if G2 can keep up their current form, if Reckless playing Callista isn't just a 1 or 2 game fad, but a new string to their bow, new arrow in their quiver, however you want to talk about it, then I think G2 should be considered the clear favorites here. But ultimately, this series will come down to which version of Mad we see on the day. That's all I got.
Okay. Well, I just want to start off by saying the first thing you said about Armut. Not only did he solo kill Wunder, he solo killed Adam as well, I believe. He had an insane game against Fnatic, and he also had a really, really good game on the Wukong as well in the last game of the split, which is against Misfits, I think.
Which is big.
So against these teams in G2, Fnatic and Misfits, having these performances is just really, really good sign at the end of the split. They brought in Vizicachi as the top lane coach now as well to help him out especially as well. So there's a lot of things going on in top lane, which are positive signs on the outside.
I did not know that. That's so hype. I
You
had
didn't
no
know about
idea.
the Vizicachi thing?
I didn't know about the Vizicachi. I've been like completely disconnected for the past week.
Ways of the Poppy will now
Ways
be
of the Poppy.
passed down.
Because we all
Elder Dragon Steel. So I
with the knock
really
away in
love
Schalke.
Vizicachi. Yes. Oh my
yeah, that's
God.
great. But we all agree that Armut had a terrible split. He was the biggest weak link on Mad Lions.
He was getting obliterated every game.
But the last Super Week has showed us that he's solo killed some of our best top laners in the league, carried the game single-handedly in some of those games as well, especially. And now he's got Chachi in to give him top lane positional coaching, which I expect has been going on for like a week or two.
Still
I
gets
imagine
caught on sides.
Still gets caught on side. He's not a flawless player.
Yeah,
but
if you think of the Rogue Mad Lions game, he got caught a lot on side lanes when he was playing Jace against.
But as you highlighted, they were big brain deaths because they led to ultimately the Elder Dragon win condition.
Good deaths. So yeah.
Okay, but if you're going to talk about Armor, I got to talk about Wonder.
I think that's fair.
The GP pick is so good.
I
think his the thing for me is that Wonder has always been a very flexible player, right?
Yeah.
Not originally, okay? To be fair, he didn't used to be.
No.
He used to be a carry player only.
He was 1-3-1 exclusively on Splice. That's why we saw such abominations as Talia top. Thank you, Yamato Cannon.
Fizz top, Camille
this
top.
was before my time. Talia top.
Talia top. It can't happen.
So yeah, Wonder. Ever since 2019, or like when he joined G2, I think is where we got to see a lot more of his like development as a player. But I think that he is a super flexible player, and I think that this split we didn't really get to see all of that, at least in the first half. But actually, maybe even the first half is unfair because I think that a lot of people hold him accountable for a couple of really bad games because he did have a couple of really bad games, but I don't think overall his split was as awful as I think people seem to think. I still think that he was still the second best performing top in the league. Like, I can't think of a top laner who I think would have outperformed him. I know some maybe would argue Hirit, but I also think that G2 don't put resources into Wonder like Misfits do into Hirit.
Second's a really hard discussion, to be fair. Odo's clear.
So we don't
first.
have to go down that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. We don't have to go down
it is
that
a hard
discussion, right?
Yeah.
But I think that Wonder is continuing to be like really flexible, and I think that his laning is much better than it was. He did get... Who did he solo die to on the gangplank? Because he took a tower shot.
Armut's Jace.
It was
Armut's
Armut.
Jace,
Yeah, it was Armut.
So apparently that solo kill didn't Wunder take 2 tower shots.
He told, he said he took a bunch of tower shots.
Oh, he told you? Yeah, because I just saw that. I was speed watching the VOD again today, and I was like, excuse me, what?
he died to the tower shots or something like that.
He died to a lot of tower
shots.
But
yeah, I think that when you compare the two top laners, like as we come into playoffs, I think they're both looking in really good form, which sets us up really nicely. The big question, I think, will be the champ pool thing, because for me, I think Gangplank is a very underutilized pick right now. That into things like Renekton can be really effective at like, especially against low mobility champions like Varus and Aphelios and Syndra, especially
if
too.
Ashe is coming back into meta, those two champions together or Gangplank against Ashe as an immobile
Just that
carry,
ult is just so effective. It's so good. And then also allows them to play through sides, like the way in which I was watching your VOD review, I think it was, where he was using GP ultimates to overextend in like bot lane, or like he'd stay for another wave because he can ult the top wave too. EUphoria was doing it in their series as a C9 as well.
Yep.
And like it just allows you to like make sure that you can keep numbers advantage in certain places on the map. I think it's such a good pick, but this is a topic of conversation that Ahmed has had before, which is that can he only play things like Wukong, Jace,
Gnar,
Renekton, Gnar, like he just seems to like fit these almost like bruiser carries, you know.
And Jace, I guess.
Maybe with Vizicachi, he will expand. Maybe he'll show us a little bit more. I don't know.
To tanks.
To tank. I mean, I think that would be great for Mads if they could just, you know, if he locks in that Ornn. I'm not saying that's good, right?
2017 spring MVP Shen. I think it's spring, might be summer.
There is like some small weakness in what I've seen from G2 is Wunder's getting dove a lot.
Yeah.
Especially in the most recent games. Even in the Schalke game, he was playing Camille versus Broken Blades GP. He's getting dove level 3, level 4. I mean, the matchup is obviously losing. He's going to get pushed in, but jungle came top. He got ganked. He got dove. Same thing on the GP game against the Jace. He got solo killed by Armut for taking 3 tower shots.
Yep.
And then as soon as he came back to lane stack wave, he got died to a gank. So there's a lot of resources from enemy teams going into top. And I don't know if that's because Wunder just kind of, obviously, one was a mistake, one was a losing matchup. But I think that's something that G2 need to be a bit careful of, especially if they're playing like Camille, GP, these kind of carries.
Ahmad will invest in top side, right?
Yeah, they will. And that's what they did, right? And he died. So they need to be very careful about that. And I think that's one of the things they really need to look out for in the playoffs, especially.
Yeah. I think that top lane is for sure, I think, one of the most interesting points on the map, because both players have been performing so well recently, whereas I feel like mid laners are both an interesting question, because we've definitely seen the return and the rise of Caps again. Bald Caps unleashed now. Humanoid.
What's their win streak now, G2? 5, 6 games?
No, it's 8.
Yeah.
They're 8-1 in the second half of the
the 8-1. They lost to Fnatic, right?
Yep.
Humanoid's always
their only loss in the second half of the split, which is crazy for the record. That is like 8-1 is really insane.
That's like, when was the last time G2 went 8-1 in a half of a split? You know,
it was the time that we were like, oh shit, G2 is gonna get the perfect first half of the season, and then they lost to like Schalke when Schalke
and
were
SK.
bad.
I think they went Schalke and SK.
Yeah, they lost it. It was I think it was Gen X mid Aatrox, and he like put on a clinic. It was like some miraculous. I don't remember, but it was.
G2 looks scary.
Yeah.
But I like that we're going lane by lane, because I think there's a lot to talk about. So if you want to skip jungle for now, we can go to mid.
Let's do jungle, I guess, last.
Can we not do jungle now?
We can do jungle now. Sure.
So
Yanko's versus Elyoya.
So Elyoya, I think, has been very muted this split.
An underwhelming split, I would say.
I wouldn't say that he's been bad per se, because I'm not sitting there thinking like sure, if you do like super micro, there are probably things you can criticize about Elyoya's play, right?
Yeah.
But I think that he's not really been the reason why the team has lost. He's had a couple pop-off games, like his Viego clip has been used a bunch of times, right? But I think that what we saw from him last playoffs, and what we even got to see from him in MSI, we haven't really gotten to see from him so far in this regular season, which, to be fair, is fine. Like, they've talked a lot about their issues. He as a player is also very young, and he's like trying to find his groove. But I think
jungle meta also very different.
Jungle meta is very different.
But in the most recent week, I feel like, in week 8, I feel like he really, really, really stepped up for me. I know you talked about in your VOD review that I watched that like Graves wasn't a good pick, or like Graves as a champion is not super strong right now, but even then he was still having massive impact on it with some of the plays that he was making. Like his Olaf performance was also really strong. It just feels like that he's so much more focused. He's so much more like mechanically strong. There's better language there, but you get the point. To me, it feels like that he is returning to his playoff forms from last bit, which really excites me, because when you put that up against a Jankos, who I think for the most part has had a very, very good split, I think that we're setting up for a very exciting jungle matchup where I think both are going to show us a lot of different things, and they're both going to be like on their A game.
And I think that talking about Jankos, there's 2 things I realized about Jankos. The first one was, I think perhaps I was wrong in the early stages of the split where I was over-criticizing Jankos, because I thought that he was actually performing bad, but in their loss streak or whatever it was when they were struggling. But then when you actually rewatch it, it's like there's really not much he can do, because lanes are really unstable. People are like dying for no reason on lanes. They're getting pushed in on losing and winning matchups, and then he's the one who's kind of suffering for it. So I have to say that looking back, maybe that was a wrong kind of misjudgment on Jankos.
And I think it was difficult at the time to figure out exactly 100% what was going wrong with G2, right? And credit to Mickey and Jankos. even at every stage of the split, they have been around their laners a ton. Now, you can see a stark contrast in the early weeks where they're there and nothing is happening. And maybe that's on Caps. I don't want to just point the blame to someone else in the moment. But you can obviously see the difference in these final weeks where Caps gets
just blame
TF.
Grabs. It's fine.
Just blame Grabs.
And I think,
or Nelson now. We can blame Nelson too. But then,
actually, since Nelson came, this is when the win streak started, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't want to
No, but I think the biggest thing that I want to bring up for the second point as to why I think G2 is winning is the jungle meta. I think jungle meta shifted away from AP champions. Rumble, Diana, we'll see them a little bit, but the biggest things right now is Lee Sin, Xin Zhao, Viego, Trundle.
Do you think Jarvan's back too, or is he not buffed
I don't think
enough
Jarvan's back
yet?
yet. He doesn't win 1v1s. Olaf as well. These are AD junglers, right? The reason AD junglers are back is because AP mages are back, right? Orianna, Syndra, there's no more Akalis, and AP junglers are weaker now because AP laners need AD junglers, right? So
TF as well.
I think TF as well, really good setup champion. Syndra, really good setup champion for these champs. So I think Jankos is much better on AD junglers. He looks like a completely different player. He looks so comfortable on things like Lee Sin, Sin Zhao. These is like
And he can play for his lanes too. That was what he was famous for, right?
AP the way kind of works, to interrupt you there. AD junglers are bridges for your laners, where AP junglers need to scale. So for example, like Diana wants to scale a little bit here and there. Rumble wants to scale a little bit there. Only exceptions, maybe Nidalee, if you have like the setup for it, you can actually play for it. But things like Lee Sin, Olaf, level 3, level 4, they just want to, get in your face.
Also, just it's way easier because when you have an AP mid laner, the AP champ pool outside of Kiana, maybe Yone, there's like no setup CC. But now you've got Syndra, hell, even Victor, even though Gravity Field's kind of an underwhelming ability, right, as a baseline. You've got Twisted Fate, and I don't think Twisted Fate will make it through Pix bans ever, if I have to guess, unless there's some spicy counter pick.
I mean, both mid laners want it, right?
Yeah, I think that champ's permad probably, or trade for something else high value.
Silas is the answer, which
Silas
also both
again
mid laners
also
play,
set up
right?
CC. There are so many champions in mid
nerfed,
lane. Yeah, but even then the E is still CC, and maybe we don't see Silas. You're right, but I think that like the setup is there, and we saw when Cass played Twisted Fate, and Twisted Fate is obviously the most extreme example because it's literally a point and click, but it's just way easier to frickin' gank. Like ganking for Lucian, unless you're bringing CC for yourself, like the enemy has to really miss position for you to get anything done. It's just way simpler to execute in an AP mid AD jungle meta.
I think it facilitates his lanes a lot more,
He literally played Lissandra, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Lissandra, really good setup. LeBlanc, amazing setup. All these champs, right? I think this is what G2 is really good at, having AP mid laners and like an AD jungler for Jankos. Whereas you can look at some regions like the LCK or the LPL where they're playing like Renekton mid, Lucian top with a Diana. And we've seen this from Vitality as well, where they play Evelynn with Renekton or with Lucian mid or whatever it may be. These double AD solo laners and then AP carry jungle, which was last year's meta as well, similarly with things like Nidalee and Lilia at Worlds, where EU was the ones to transition very slowly into this carry jungle meta, where now it's not so much a carry jungle pool, it's more of a bruiser jungle pool in AD champions, which I think is just much better for G2.
So this is also interesting from Oyo's perspective because I didn't follow him in his early career.
Yeah.
To be fair, his career isn't that long.
He's actually still, again, reminder that his trajectory is
But
still
having a
pretty
look
crazy.
at his overall competitive history, Graves is his most played at 25. Volibear is his next to 15, which a lot of those came from LEC, and then Udyr, Trundle, Rumble. So I wonder how he'll do as we transition. I mean, we're already in this meta, right? And he obviously had a great week 8.
Sure.
But what does he look like when he has to gank a little more? Like, does he look like when he has to play for a little bit?
I mean,
because bear in mind, like, he has been the player when he played against Inspired. It was like the mental warfare, right? When we saw those two match up against each other.
I mean, it was...
We were watching some really fantastic jungling between the two junglers where they were
agree.
constantly trying to outthink each other and outplay each other. And like it was very much about playing for themselves. But of course, the caveat to that was he was always playing Volibear, which was less about that carry and more about like, I need to try and get a couple ganks for my bot lane or like my top lane to try and get them ahead a little bit more. And then I'm going to just constantly try and fight the enemy jungle.
And looking back at that series, he was in the, the Udyr Hecarim meta. He was the guy playing Volibear and ganking and sacrificing camps and doing crazy pathing.
But his
to
Udyr
tower
and his
dive
Graves
bottom.
are kind of the things that he is known for and the things that he's the most comfortable on.
And maybe Graves shows up more. I don't know. But
I mean,
like,
I don't know for sure.
I don't think El Yo-Yo is going to struggle with the pathing or the idea of shifting to ganking champions. The question for me is more on the line of what you're talking about. Does the champion pool support that? Because he can dive on Volibear. We saw that literally in the finals just consistently. Sure. When he was sacking, he was willing to give up a camp here or two to get a dive, and he always made it work. And that was part of the reason that he was able to go toe to toe with Inspired. But can he do the same thing on Lee Sin, Xin Zhao? If those champions are banned away and he has to play Graves, it's way harder to get the same impact.
Yeah, I think that speaking from my experience, you play what your laners play, right? So if my laners are very comfortable on mages or scaling tops, then you slot in as the last piece, right? They're first, you're second, right? So I think the only exception I can think of is Vitality, but still it applies to their lanes because they like AD champs, right? The leader likes to play AD assassins, whatever it is. He likes to play AP assassins, whatever. And you can play things like Rumble and Evelynn. But if your mid laner likes mage and stuff, then you slot in AD junglers. And I think Humanoid is more of like an AP-ish player, you know, things like Orianna, Kali, whatever it may be, Sylas, LeBlanc. So LoL will have to slot in, and Udyr Hecarim were very good baseline champions to just slot in easily because tanks can gank, farm fast, very easy. Lee Sin, Xin Zhao.
He hasn't played Xin once in his career competitively.
Really?
According to this, what my info, I do not see a single Xin game anywhere in his entire career. Admittedly, he doesn't have the greatest number of games because, as we said, he's 97 wins, 50 losses total, so 147.
When we can keep an eye on if Mad have banned it really consistently or if it's been banned against them.
I think this is something that they have to learn in a way. Like, I think Xin Zhao is so...
I mean, I'd be surprised if he doesn't play it.
I mean, just because you haven't played it on stage.
But we're try-casting this so we can look more into the data later this week.
Yeah,
so
we haven't done our prep yet, but we will be doing it all.
This is our first day back.
But I'm just curious how much time we have because we don't want to talk to him. We still have two other lanes we need to get
through. We have three. We'll talk about bot as a whole unit. Let's move on to mid. And I would say,
but jungle matchup hype. I think
jungle matchup
is
is very hype.
Very hype.
Yep. So mid lane, Humanoid versus Caps. Caps shaved his head and he's back to being Caps. Unleashed. The hair held him back. It was like 100 kilo training weight, apparently. Very dense hair on that boy.
So can I just very quickly talk about this?
Yeah, sure.
So Humanoid, if he was one of my considerations for MVP, now I didn't put him on my MVP list, but he was one of my considerations all split long for MVP.
Yep.
And I think that people weren't like angry at me for it because I talked about it a lot on broadcast, but I think a lot of people were kind of confused because they were like, well, Humanoid's good, but he seems to like die a lot, right? And I'm like, yeah, there are a good number of examples, especially if you look at the second half where like he has a Syndra game against G2 where I think he has 9, 11 deaths or something like that.
That game was rough, yeah.
It was a rough game for him. But for me, when Mad was struggling, Humanoid was playing phenomenally. He was the reason Mad was winning games when they shouldn't have been. Like, his Rise was insane, his Twisted Fate was insane, his Akali was insane. Like, he had so many incredible performances that, to me, Humanoid, for a lot of the split, was the best performing mid. And I would have said that if his second half had been as strong or as consistent as his first half, then I would have given him best mid in the split. But because Larson and Caps and other mids kind of like got better towards the second half, I think that conversation became a lot harder to be able to sit there and say Humanoid at the end of the split was for sure the best mid in the league.
And that's also the end of the split was when we did see that million death game.
Right, exactly. So it's one of those things where like, I believe Humanoid is incredibly talented and maybe he just kind of put more weight in at the beginning of the split and then he was like, okay, the rest of my team is now stepped up. So I'm like getting into a little bit more. I don't know if that's even like good logic, but the thing that I really want to make clear is that last playoffs, Humanoid was one of the best performing players on Mad Lions. Like, I remember his Victor games being absolutely ridiculous. And the reason why I just kind of want to hype up Humanoid is just because I feel like, partly because of us, you know, we would meme that he dies a lot in side lane, right? And that's a fair stereotype because he does die a lot in side lane. He just dies a lot. But I think that because he dies so much...
I think when it applies to a single person, it's just a trend, by
I
the
mean,
way.
Sure. That's fair. It's good that you don't speak for a living. But I think that the reason why is like, I kind of want to counterbalance that and say that like Humanoid does a lot of other things very well. He is constantly willing to make plays. His laning is very reliable and good. And he's just an all-round great player. And I think that sets us up really nicely when going up against Caps, because Caps has kind of dominated the mid lane throne for so long. And last split was the first time that I think that Larson and Humanoid really just kind of put him in his place to a degree, you know, like, and I don't remember those series perfectly, so I'm not going to sit there and say Humanoid and Larson were better than Caps in those playoff games. But the fact that those two players have stepped up so much and the fact that this mid lane top end is so competitive is just so exciting to me, because I love that EU mids was a great, like a bit of a meme, but it was also true because of the days of Frog and Alexish, Xpeke. Like, I feel like for a little while we had a bit of a slump during the growth, and now like we're really seeing peak Humanoid, peak Larson, peak Caps, and I hope that they all just peak at the same time so that we can just have that really insane mid lane trio or battling it out and fighting for the top.
And that's always going to be the question, I think, with Humanoid and in Mad in general. We've seen a lot of peaks and troughs, but I think no matter what has happened to G2, it is always an achievement to take a best of 5 off of Caps. I think there's always going to be context there, but again, the amount of what we got, like we got Doinby, we got Rookie, we got Nemesis.
Scout, you could also wait. No, Scout never took a best of 5. So you're talking about the people that took a best of 5 off Caps.
Taking a best of 5 Caps. And there's a list, but it's mostly international names. And now it's starting to grow, obviously.
Faker never did it, by the way. Faker's never taken a series. They never played when he was on Fnatic.
Yeah. But, and I mean, he might.
So that means that Zhao, who must have taken a series off him too in 2018.
Did we aren't? Yeah, they lost.
Because of MSI, it was MSI. 2018 MSI first round.
Oh yeah, 2018 MSI.
Yeah.
So, God, I can't remember this.
I was just gonna talk off the back of what Vedi said about this matchup, because I think that 2 things again. One, both these players have exactly the same champion pools in a way, where I think we'll see a lot of LeBlanc bans, and I think Lissandra answers if that champ is picked. We'll see a lot of Orianas. We'll see a lot of Twisted Fate priority from both these players. So I think those 4 champions in essence will be very high priority and probably picked majority throughout the series. And the second thing is this mid lane can never be talked in isolation, where jungle support G2 is always coming mid. Even I was watching some stream where Fabiven, he even said, he said, I'll quote something like, I remember playing at G2 all the time, Caps will even pick a losing lane as long as it has setup. Even if I get the push, I'll just get 3-man ganked on cooldown on every wave. So I was like, yeah, that sounds basically like G2. You're going to get ganked from Yanko's top side, Mickey from bot side, and that's just going to happen. And we've seen that in G2's games non-stop. So I think that it's going to be a battle between who can get to mid first.
I mean, that's how they shut them when they played in week 8, day 1. The reason why I had 11 deaths, I mean, we talked about it on the cast, Medic and I, like Humanoid was almost targeted, right?
Literally,
the amount of
Caps' flash on cooldown was used to flash gold card Humanoid.
It's a great example. He was playing Syndra into TF, right?
Yeah.
He gets the push. What happens when he gets the push? He gets 3-man ganked and he dies on flash on every single cooldown, right? So that's probably what's going to happen, unless it's a mage versus mage.
You're right. You're completely right. Talk about how hype this mid lane matchup is, and it doesn't matter. It's not a mid lane matchup.
I think the only 2 times I've seen Caps get solo killed was in, I think, the Schalke game and the XL game, the last games where he flashes forwards. One on Lissandra, where he tries to W flash.
And he misses his W.
Yeah, he tries to W flash, but he can't do it, Caps. And if he did it, he would have killed him. And then the Oriana one, where he tried to flash Dissonance, flash W on the ground.
Oh, yeah, and there's a trundle there.
Yeah, that's the only time we ever saw 1v1 action. Apart from that, I think it's majority of the time
You're
just
right.
like the
You're
jungle
100%
support.
right.
So then,
you're totally right.
Let's shift the discussion then down to bottom lane, because supports are obviously going to be a big part of that picture, and supports getting out of lane has obviously determined a lot on the 2v2 matchups that get locked in. Now, my initial read on this is that both of these bot lanes can be pretty inconsistent. Mad's more notoriously so. I think the biggest difference is Reckless here is kind of the rock, but Reckless also, the question is what is his champion pool going to look like? Because I don't think we're going to be in a Jhin meta. He saw Kalista.
Probably not a Karma meta either.
Not a Karma meta either, you know?
I think the important thing is the Kalista and the fact that he found success on it. He's like...
He found success, but it's important to note that he did find success in the game where literally everyone just played through mid, and he was, I remember, because I watched this game this morning, he was like 8-0-1.
Which one?
This is the game versus Mad. He played the Kalista. This was the game where he was like legendary and doing awesome. But that game wasn't really about him. The level 1, they traded 1-for-1. He has to flash away from El Yo-Yo. That game wasn't about him. That game was about Caps and Wonder and Yankos murdering everyone on the map.
Even in your VOD review, you were highlighting how... Do you remember he couldn't go bot lane?
Yeah, there was one instance
where
mid. There was one instance where he couldn't go bot because they were making him play topside. He had to catch.
But he lost like 3 waves.
He lost a lot. But I think that the most important thing is the fact that he has 3 games on Kalista. And for me, Reckless confidence is the biggest key for me when it comes to champions. He's even said it publicly. Like if he feels comfortable on champ, he'll pick it. He's played it 3 times on Sage. He won 3 times on Sage. You know. It's results-based analysis, but the fact that he'll feel confident about it.
And bringing up that he's played it 3 times is big. I just want to say that, like, I think that specifically the game that we saw versus Mad, while he did still play the champion very well, the game wasn't about his Kalista. And if there is a game where it needs to be about his Kalista, where it's like we've seen it with Fnatic or we've seen it with Rogue this season, where it's, all right, 5 tower plates for you here, and now you're going top, and it's 5 tower plates for you here, and now you're Giga-fed, and you need to win us the game. Like, if it's one of those games, can Reckless still perform? And I think it's fair to say that while that game wasn't, he has had games where it has been the Reckless show on Kalista, and that is important.
But I think that flexibility will be really important in this bot lane matchup. We can talk about who's the better bot lane, who's going to get the push. We can talk about supports as well. But I think AD pool will come down to a lot of things where Reckless has been playing a lot of Tristana Kalista, right? Aggressive champions. Carzy gave us a tease of Draven, and we've seen him play Draven before. We've seen Ashe, we've seen Aphelios,
Ashe
we've
was
seen
the one I was
Varus.
thinking of.
Ashe
for him.
existing in the meta already, again, makes Kalista less of just like a free pick like she was for most of the season.
Like Carzy has a deep champion pool that we've seen, and we've seen Reckless also come out of his comfort zone and play things like, aggressive Tristanas, Vaynes. We've seen Kalista's exact season. So I think that AD champion pool will be the most interesting thing for me in this matchup as to when will AD be picked, and I think it will be probably on 4-5 unless Varus Kalista is open. And what can they match each ADs with, right? So if I blind pick like an Ashe, can you match it with something? Or if I blind pick like a Draven that Carzy might do, does Reckless have an answer to it?
Okay, so this is probably a really unfair question, but let's say, because obviously it's super comp dependent, but I feel like that maybe we can have the conversation. Who do you think is the better 5v5 team? If they just have to play a team fight, who would you... And I get it. You're immediately going to think, well, it depends on what the comps are, right? Like, I understand that it's not as straightforward as...
So you're basically asking which team has better mechanical players in a sense, right? Who will execute a fight better?
Yeah, because on an individual level, I think that you would sit there and make the argument that probably G2 has an individual pound-for-pound talent, stronger individual player base. But in the 5v5, when it comes to like group play and team play, a part of me just feels like I have more confidence in Mad than I do in G2.
I can't answer that question. I can't.
No, that's fine.
Without having a comp, I can't
No,
answer
I mean,
it.
that's totally reasonable. I said it was an unfair question.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying...
I can see where you're coming from.
Here's the Achilles heel to this whole thing, and this is what stresses me out about Mad and predicting Mad ever. And we'll get like one more round of discussion in here, and then we should wrap this up and move on to Vitality versus Fnatic. Is just the Carzy coin flip. And I hate talking about this because, again, it feels, while it is a trend, it's like the humanoid dice thing.
The last time they met in last split was
he
his
obliterated
Jinx
them.
8-kill game,
Yeah,
with
he
the
absolutely
8k damage,
obliterated them. And the context is important there, too, because Reckless was playing Karma, so you can argue that, like, his performance is kind of overinflated by the fact that, like, maybe G2's champion
because he got bodied by Hans, too, right?
Wasn't right. Because then, yes, this is the other issue, is that when he rolled into finals, I think it was just about every game they got 2v2 killed in lane by Hans Trimby. Like, who by all accounts, Trimby and this is his first split, remember, like, probably should have been worse, but they just destroyed them. Mm-hmm. So this is the thing for me, is making sure that the good version of Carzy, not inflated by any karma, the one that we got to see, because he did redeem himself at MSI, I think, to a certain degree. He really popped off on the international stage in a couple games. But is that the version of Carzy we get? Because Feast or Famine has been the story for this guy.
So I think that, like, Caedrel set up a really nice expectation for us early, though, in the conversation, which is that the meta right now, when you compare it to last split, it was very much about carry junglers, but also, if you remember the final, Volibear versus Udyr was often what we saw for Elyoya versus Inspired, and often the conversation was in that final, I remember because you guys were casting it, was, can Elyoya get a gank off?
Yep.
Right? And he would often get ganks top, to try and shut down Odo Omne, try and get Armored ahead. But sometimes he would also be able to get ganks in bot lane and try and like shut down Hans Summer and Trimby, which didn't ultimately do a lot. But it's not about that anymore, because it's about bot lanes roaming to mids and a lot of play through mid.
Sure.
And so I think that, like, I would be less concerned about Carzy, because I think that Carzy, even in their last matchup, showcased that, like, when it just becomes AD carry versus AD carry, he's fine. Like the volatility ultimately comes from like what the supports are up to, and it seems that in the current meta it ultimately revolves around mids, and that also brings me to then like the overall consensus. I think that when we think about what the meta is like, which is jungle, mid, support, moving around the map a lot, I think the G2 is just better at it than Mad is, and I think that I would have more weight in G2 winning the series, especially based on how they've looked in the second half of the split, in being able to execute that. So thanks, Mark, for setting up that expectation on what the meta looks like right now, because I think that actually makes this matchup a lot easier for me to see and kind of break apart.
Yeah, I think if you're a viewer at home or you're a fan of any league, just watch any pro game in the last 2 weeks. You'll see everyone's just hovering around mid the whole game until Herald dies.
But Vedi said, given the context of the meta, feels like G2's favored. G2 win 3-2, 3-1, 3-0.
3-1 is kind of what I would say.
I'm going to follow historical trend here and throw out all analysis and narrative out the window and say that G2 are the loser bracket kings.
Historical trend is narrative, dude.
What is G2 being a loser?
The secret is everything is narrative.
I was thinking individual narrative. Oh, okay.
People get mad when you're like, Caps is an MVP player, and it's like narrative, and it's like, but the stats, they're like also narrative. And you're like, but the eye test, that's narrative too. How dare you? The secret is everything is actually narrative if you look at it long enough.
Yeah.
I was about to say I think Mad Lion's going to win the series and G2 is going to win the losers bracket, but no, I don't know, dude. I don't know who's going to win this series. I think it might go to 5 games.
That's crazy.
I mean, Mad's really freaking good.
Yeah, they are. Mad are good. They're really good.
It's funny because I feel like people don't realize how good they actually are, but this team is really insane.
Well, and I think, again, I understand if people are skeptical, especially if you haven't been watching LEC for a long time, because Mad regular season
it's
was
nothing
hit or
stellar.
miss. Yeah, it was
never,
really
it never
hit, or,
wows you.
hit or miss.
But then again, they finished second, didn't they? And they had
That's second because of championship points.
second
Yeah,
because of championship points, I suppose.
I think like they finished third overall because they had 12 wins, I think it was.
Yeah, they finished
something like
tied
that.
for second with G2 and Misfits, but they probably finished third because of tiebreakers. But I think the thing that I just want to say is, this is my second split as a caster, right? From an outside perspective, watching playoffs and stuff like this, this is the most insanely stacked playoffs I've ever seen personally. I don't know about you guys, but I think any of these 6 teams could make a long run. There's an argument for maybe just 5. I don't know how strong Vitality will be.
Yeah,
and Misfits, for example, as well. But I think that our playoffs is stacked.
Yeah,
Our
no, I
playoff
agree.
is stacked.
It's very
Good
exciting.
job. Now say new era for me one time.
No, I won't say it. I won't say it.
All right. He's holding on.
Oh, you want to make a new narrative? It's the rise of new teams to
That's
the top.
new era. That's new era.
Yo, just said in a different way. We can just slap on a new sticker. You know?
Dynasty Legacy King.
Because I feel like all of these series, even if you were to model them around, I think that there's an argument to be made for maybe 1 or 2. There's no they're going to win no matter what. You know?
Okay. Here's what I'll say. Our top 4 is super stacked. Vitality are a dark horse. We're going to switch to Vitality Fnatic now because we've gone here for a while. And I agree. I'm going to say G2 3-2 because I just want 5 games.
Okay, I'll say Mad 3-2 as well, just to be the, one of us is right.
Oh, okay.
I said G2. Okay.
I mean, we could also just be wrong.
Yeah.
One of us can't. It could just not go to 5 games,
Yeah,
Caedrel. We haven't covered all bases here. Anyway, so I will say that Fnatic, if people are hands down convinced that Fnatic is like up there with the top 4, I can see why, because there's certainly the highs are there. But I think more than any team, Fnatic has been all over the place. And Vitality.
Well, hang on. Are we getting into this?
We're getting into this.
Okay, then
Vitality's-
give me my 60 seconds.
Oh, yeah, it's his turn for the 60 seconds. Yeah.
Hold on.
3.
Phil, hang on. Wait, Phil. Listen. Guys, Phil's our producer for Euphoria. Listen, I'm going to need dramatic music for this. Which one is my single? Is that my single or is that the wide? That's my single. Can that even see me? Can that? Okay.
This is classic Vedius, by the way.
This is classic
He can plan
Vedius.
this stuff ahead of time, but he does it mid-segment.
Because I've just come up with it on the fly. Okay?
But it also just makes him look like he's the boss of everything.
I'm going to need epic music. Okay, Phil? So I'm praying for this. Okay, give me the countdown, Caedrel and Drakos.
3, 2, 1.
In a world of drama and chaos, Fnatic now meet their rivals in Vitality. Self-made, former Fnatic player thrown to the side to find his spot in a new team of potentially toxic players. Along the side of Leader and Crownshot, L9 was reunited and they had to claw their way through the dregs of the bottom teams to make their way into the top 6 to now fight the fabled Fnatic. The former kings, they looked unstoppable, yet they sit here in the lower bracket after suffering a humiliating defeat to literally everyone. Now they must fight for a spot at World. They must go toe to toe. They must fight with everything that they've got. Drama, tension, everything that you could want, all happening on Sunday.
Casted by Vedius.
Casted by me and Medic.
Wow.
Jesus.
I could hear, the Mjolnir remix of the Halo song with the guitar as you were building, and then when you started popping off, I was like, yes, so made up, Whippo, yes, excitement,
Oh,
drama.
I should have said Whippo, you're right. Yeah,
Copyrighted
damn it.
music.
I missed the autofilled jungler. Damn, I missed
It's
that.
worth the DMCA. Put it in.
Leader versus Niski. Rumors of Leader joining Fnatic last year, Maybe he's
You see
going
what
to
I'm
join with
saying?
something.
There was so much. I should have prepped better. That could have been so much more dramatic. I should have read a script.
It doesn't. We're here to back you
Crown
up,
shot
brother.
versus
That's what the
upset.
trio is for.
That's what the trio is. Right, now that we've got the narrative out of the way. Right,
Okay,
so 3-0 Fnatic.
About this matchup context. Now, if you missed the last time these two teams played, it was a few weeks ago. But Adam did solo kill Sagenda, and Sagenda was a Gwen with Ignite. So
But in
He
that
was
game,
playing Set, wasn't he?
Shigenda almost killed Adam, and Adam lived on 1 HP.
That's true.
So he
because
was
of set
he-
passive.
I don't know how
dab.
much HP
Right,
it
and
was.
you almost made playoffs. Can that matters?
Wow,
You know what I mean? What is it? When does almost matter, Caedrel?
Because the context is important. When he got solo killed,
Horseshoes and hand grenades, baby. That's what almost
when
matters.
Shigenda got solo killed, he had no ignite because he used it earlier on to try and kill Adam, who lived on like 4 to 5 HP, which would have been a solo kill, but it wasn't. And if you want to use the variable of it didn't happen, then it didn't happen, then sure. But I think there was it was close.
It was close. I will say that Adam outperformed him in that game, and we can see if that changes. But I'm going to use that as an argument for a teensy-weensy top gap. Now, I don't know much about that top lane matchup, but it was 18 CS to 2. He crashed 2 waves in that top lane tower and got a free roam mid in like the first 2 minutes of that matchup.
Can I just like summarize these teams? Because I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty.
I gave you a minute to summarize the matchup.
I know, but like I'd rather we don't. With these two teams, I think that talking individual matchups is less valuable than just talking about the team's identity. Similar to Rogue
Sure.
versus
Yeah, I
Misfits.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Because I think that when we look at Vitality's style, they don't have one, is my opinion. I don't think that they actually like. Originally, they tried to play through mids, and they were like a more topside focused team, but I think that they kind of abandoned that style, especially in recent weeks where leaders just dying 1v1. I think he died 1v1 3 times at least in the second half of the split. I remember him getting solo killed by Vito. He got solo killed by Larson, I think it was as well.
Yeah, he had a few. He got solo killed a lot.
And so like
the
self-made basically said, I'm not going mid anymore. But we even heard from Selfmade in the final week where he said, yeah, let's not do any team meeting prep. Let's not do any planning. Let's just flip it. Let's just kind of do what feels good on the day. And like they 3-0'd in the final weekend where they just kind of relied on...
I have a little bit of logic behind that. So I think as much as it was like, let's flip it, I did a little bit of research. So before their 3-game win streak, they lost 4 games in a row.
Yes.
In those 4 losses, every single player played a different champion every single game, right?
Okay.
So unique champion every game in all 4 of those losses.
Okay.
In the 3-game win streak, they played Renekton Akali, solo lanes, all 3 games. They played 2 games of Alistar in a row. So almost like a formula of plug and play with jungle AD and having the same top mid support every game. So as much as they flipped it, I don't know if it was just coincidental flip, but they stuck to something that was working for them every single game.
Right.
I think the Rogue game's a small exception where they were getting bodied and then just made an insane comeback.
But it was all about comfort picks, wasn't it? Like, wasn't
guess.
leader on Akali?
He was in Akali all 3 games, I believe. Yeah.
What did Selfmade play? Like, Selfmade was the one
Selfmade
mixing
played
it up, right?
Rumble, He played
a bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, he played Rumble.
But what was their support pick
Olaf.
that they consistently picked?
They played Alistar 2 games.
Okay.
So they had
and
like
then it was Varus for crown shot, right?
Varus Jinx for crown shot every
Yeah.
game. So they had like
So-
this semi-formula, which is crazy to me if you just look at the context of the 4 losses of all these unique champions and then the 3 wins of all these kind of exact same champions. It's easily targetable. But that's what works for them to get them their 3 wins.
And I think that ultimately but this kind of comes back to my point about I don't think Vitality have a clear team identity, which is that like when you struggle as a team, maybe you can speak more about this, sometimes just defaulting to comfort, playing champions that you understand really well and explaining to your teammates, this is what I need from you and this is what I can do for you. And then people just kind of work with that information. And then because individually this roster is very, very stacked, right? Like we know that leader mechanic, like he showed it in his Akali games that he's a very good Akali player, right? Selfmade is a very smart jungler. Crown shot and Labrov's had an insane split.
Labrov is unreal.
He is so good.
I was very. I was considering him for top 3, but I think
he's top 3.
I don't think he should be there yet, but I think he is incredibly
top
good.
3.
I also think Crown Shot has had a fantastic second half of the split. Even though they've been losing that 4 games in a row, in their 3 wins, he was a huge part of it. Leader, struggling in lane, great mechanics, and Selfmade's.
But this is the thing, like really,
really
it's kind of like it's almost like a solo queue team, almost. Yeah. And I don't want to flame them at all, but it's like really good mechanics, just not smart macro. Their macro just isn't that great, right? To
be fair, we've had teams like this before who have said those exact same things. Let's not do our draft meeting. Sometimes even let's not scrim. Do you guys remember Forgiven H2K? That was our best performing team at 2016 Worlds. They stopped scrimming and they played infinitely better.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's healthy. I'm not going to say it's long-term viable.
Was it you that told me that you lost all your scrims and then won?
24 scrims in a row.
Oh, yeah.
Won both games on stage.
He just dabbed for the listeners only. Just
wasn't there Albus Nox Luna in an interview when they made quarterfinals said, yeah, we've just been playing WoW for 2 weeks. No one wants to scrim us.
Yeah.
And they made it.
Oh my god.
Scrims are in reality
Some fake data.
I won't tell you that it's a sign of a long-term health for a team, but sometimes not scrimming for whatever reason is the right choice for some teams to perform.
But I think what's cool about Vitality as a whole is that like the fact that they got here, I don't think many people expected them to. I think a lot of people saw Astralis in a weird way as like the team that would just somehow make it into playoffs.
Yeah, it was because of their strength of schedule.
Yeah.
They had an easy strength of schedule, and Rogue lost to Vitality despite having never lost to a bottom 6 team ever. They only ever lost to top 4 teams the whole split.
And then they beat Rogue.
And then Vitality beat Rogue despite Rogue being 5k up in 20 minutes, 6k up. That game was crazy. So, yeah, Astralis should have made it, but Vitality made it. And now we've got the most hype narrative matchup you could ever want in a best of 5.
Yeah, sometimes I do think it's scripted and I just don't know. Like,
But do you remember when Reckless was on EUphoria and he was talking about how these teams just have like this super aggressive take every fight playstyle on one end of the scale, and there's like Rogue on the other where it's just very clean macro well-oiled machine.
I mean, these are both of the super
These
aggressive
are
take
both
every
of
single
the,
fight.
like, I will bite you if you take one step forward, and if you hit me, I'm hitting you in lane phase. Expect my old top
For
laner.
context, the last time these guys played a game against each other, every single lane had a kill or a death by 4 minutes.
I'll just give a small analogy.
Wait, really?
yeah. Like literally every single lane had been involved in a kill. Like so, the top lane solo death or solo kill for Adam, right? And then like bot lane, there was like an all-in kill that was like crazy. Oh, it was actually nuts. I'm trying to remember if that's right.
Small analogy. I used to play with a top laner called Expect. You'll know him, Expect, right? He played a scrim once and he died. He got solo killed like 9 times in a row, and it was fine. We were like, so what's wrong? And his argument for the whole thing was he hit me, so I hit him back. And I was like, yeah, but you died. And he's like, yeah, but if he hits me, I have to hit him back. It's just a matchup. And that's what this matchup is. That's what this matchup is. That's what I'll never forget that moment when he said that.
It's like I slap you and you're like, I'm going to slap you back.
Yeah, so
and
I
then
said-
he's like, well, you slap me, now I'm going to slap you.
Yeah, I was like, so can't you just run away if he hits you? He's like,
So-
no, but then I lose my lane. I have to hit him back.
It's really
Oh,
weird,
yeah? Okay.
weird tangent, right? So they at some point were using like machine learning to talk about how like international politics could work, right? And one of the ones they figured out didn't work is the escalation one. So anytime you do anything, I escalate, because all that happens is you just escalate back and forth. So they had to come up with a new model where it's like, okay, you escalate, but then you just kind of take it one time just so there's not, nuclear war.
Someone
Fnatic
has
and
to-
Vitality, they're straight to nuclear war. Like we start with like a little gentle glove slap into a gentleman's duel, but then it's like first it's pistols at dawn and then it's nukes at midnight. You know what I mean?
Thing
Like
is-
Pistols at dawn, nukes at midnight. Fnatic versus Vitality. Sunday at 6 p.m.
yeah, it's just escalate,
It's like, you're
escalate,
like,
escalate.
say, have you ever played the Fallout games? Yeah, want to know how they started?
Yeah, this best of
Fnatic versus Vitality.
Oh, man.
Sadly,
So-
by the end, it turns into Fallout 76. So we'll
Yeah.
hope that it's a 3-0.
When no one interacts with each other.
It's just not good.
So, we
Wow.
talked a lot about Vitality, Fnatic. We should probably
Back to analysis.
Yeah, but we should probably summarize like what happened with that team.
Yeah, for sure.
because I think that the easy way out is to sit there and say that they were the subject of their own aggression, right? They were like their own defeat in many ways. Where like,
Sure.
and like, I think that if you want to kind of put it on the surface, I'm going to call it surface level analysis in the sense that like, if you just kind of like use your eyes, you just kind of look at this and you sit there and go, okay, well, I remember
As
that
opposed
game.
to the deep analysis where I
Right.
call out to the void
Right, yeah,
and
you-
the voices whisper to
exactly.
me. Yeah.
But all the other words where I cheat and ask the pro players.
Deep analysis. I like it because it's true.
It's true, yeah. There was that game where they were insanely fed. I forget exactly who they were playing, but Niski was on Akali. Adam was on Renekton.
Yep,
Misfits.
That was the Misfits game where like Adam killed the Xin Zhao top lane and you were like,
Yep.
wow, Xin doesn't get to play this game. And then they were bot lane. They had no ults. They had no flashes. And then they took a 2v3 fight and then they die and then they lose Drake. And I think they lost Baron off the back of that too. And it's like really dumb stuff like that has cost Fnatic a bunch of
That
games.
DP sucked.
Yeah. Yeah, that whole like sequence of events. Yeah.
That was all in the same kind of 2 weeks.
Yeah, and like it's just kind of like Fnatic have showcased that they have really strong individuals. They know how to get early game leads. I think the Bwipo, when I think that in the second half, he lost to Yankos, he lost to Elyoya, and he lost to Inspired.
Yep.
So kind of like the big three. He did beat Razork with some clever pathing where he really kind of shut him down, and then Razork kind of entered it after that. But I think there are some question marks still around Bwipo about how he's going to stack up against other top tier junglers. But I think the matchup against Selfmade is always fascinating because Selfmade is also like a bit inconsistent. He's the same kind of player that's like, oh yeah, sure, I'll flip this fight. And I think that one of his big issues this split has actually been where he's been in situations where how many times have you guys cast a game where you're like, why is Selfmade here? And then he's just kind of dead.
It's like he's going mid lane for leader all the time, where it's like, wait, where is he?
He does have ups and downs, but I think Selfmade has like really high peaks where he's like
of course.
inspired level, right?
Of course.
But
He's
then swings the other side where it's very inconsistent.
And consistency isn't his thing. But I don't want to move to. I kind of want to keep the topic on Fnatic because I think that do you think that their whole issues can simply be summarized to they are too over aggressive at times when they don't need to be, or do you think that there is something deeper there?
I think if you want to simplify it that way, I think that is probably,
because I think that's a simple answer.
I think that's probably oversimplified, but I think that's like the easy answer, right?
I said, I think it's the easy answer.
Because I think the other thing is it's not like the team as a whole, as a 5-man unit, takes over aggressive fights consistently. Because what we saw in a number of the games, for example, the Niski Cassio game, he like TPs and he's TPing from behind, and he needs like 5 seconds to finish that TP and to get into a position to actually flank. But the second he hits that TP, Bwipo and Hylissang have started the fight. So by the time he finishes the TP, the fight's over and his team is freaking dead and he's in the middle of nowhere. Right? So those moments, those disconnects are what I'm looking at. To me, it's less of like a Fnatic are picking bad fights and more like Fnatic are not communicating or not on the same page when they do start fights is the big thing. Because like Niski was pretty strong in that game on the Cassio. If he had been in that flank position, if he had 3 more seconds before that fight starts.
Which game is this?
I can't remember. I just remember the Cassio.
It was against Mad Lions, and they were playing an Olaf Sylas comp, and that's why he picked Cassio mid.
Yeah.
I think that there's a couple of things I attribute to Fnatic. The first one is they're trying a lot of things, I think. If you take away Bwipo's Viego game against Rogue, where I think Inspired just can completely out-jungle him from the level 3 invade.
That was the one game where he was completely and totally jungle
I think he was
gapped.
really out-jungled. I mean, it came down to level 3 invade where he killed him on his red buff, and from there it was just like a snowball effect from winning through mid. He's been playing things like Rengar, which was working, but they lost the game. They've been playing Mundo jungle, which... Yeah, Bwipo has a couple of games.
Their early games are really good.
Their early games good. Cassio mid, they've been playing a lot of Morgana support, which I'm not really a fan of. You're winning the lane, and I think that's another thing. Their bot lane is playing these win lane kind of champs, where it's like, Tristana, Morgana, Ezreal, Morgana, they get a CS
Ezreal
lead.
Karma they played once too.
I think it was double Morgana game they played. Maybe they played Karma, but
maybe. Was that? I think you're right. I remember just an Ezreal game from Upset that I don't think
was with Morgana.
Good.
But my point is they're winning lane, but now you have Hylissang on a non-engaged champ. He's playing a Morgana, which is playing a black shield champ. So now your engage has to come from top jungle or mid, or someone has to start the fight or punish someone overextending. And when it's not Hylissang because he's on Morgana, it's like, well, who really is it? So the fights are really messy. And then I agreed on the third point. It's like you two are completely right. They're just overextending in every fight. You're playing a Cassio comp. You can scale for free, in the sense where you can just kind of take the game slow, still overforcing.
I mean, I remember in the Twisted Fate Rengar comp, I didn't talk about it because the game was just so chaotic. But then like halfway through the game, I was like, wait, they should be just playing through sides. This whole comp works through like Rengar ults, TF ults, you just attack side lane. I was like, like that makes way more sense. I really understand this comp. I'm like, then why have we just been casting 5v5s for the last 20 minutes?
And I think that this can be applied where I think that Fnatic have to ask themselves a very important question during the game, and it's a very simple one, and it's very easy. It's like, how do you want to win the game? What's our win condition?
Yeah.
Right? You're completely right. You have TF Rengar and you have a set on side. Just play through side lanes. They have a Nocturne, they want a hard engage mid, whatever it may be. You can always match side lanes and win through side. You have a Cassio comp where I think Niski got like 3 kills in the early game. 2 or 3 kills.
He was really strong.
He was so fed. Your Cassio, who is scaling against a Sylas Olaf, has 3 kills in the early game with 2 kills. It's 1. Just chill. Everyone chill. We can scale. Then there's like this 5-man playing bot. Everyone's TPing in. Something messy's happening, or I can't remember where it was, where they started losing the fights and losing the game. But yeah, Adam struggled in the solo kill, and then I think that there's very easy to fix mistakes where it's like play comfort, don't overextend, have a good winning bot where Hylissang can engage. Put Hylissang on engage. Yeah, 3 king things. Hylissang on engage. Don't overextend or make these crazy overforce mistakes in the game itself, and just play comfort.
Yeah.
And the win conditions, I think, was a really good.
Win
just
conditions,
like reminding yourself of the win conditions. Is good.
I think to wrap this up, just final predictions from me. I expect this to be probably a Fnatic 3-1 or a 3-2. Ultimately,
I think Fnatic 3-0 personally.
I think Fnatic are very much the better team, but I think the one thing that we haven't seen from Fnatic yet this season, or at least not yet this season, but in these last few weeks, is the consistency with which would give me the confidence to say a clean 3-0. Now, they could solve these
So
problems.
you think the Fnatic will lose a game themselves?
I think Fnatic are clearly the better team, and I think if you wanted to say a 3-0 is indicative that I think that like Fnatic are 100% the clear favorites. I think they're 100% the clear favorites, but
Right.
I also think this could be a 3-1 or a 3-2 because Fnatic are their own worst enemies.
I mean, they're both super volatile teams, right? That's just kind of the nature.
That's just what I think, right? And I think,
fair.
but I 100% believe that Fnatic are going to win this series.
Well, loser doesn't make it a world.
Sag.
And the winner doesn't either. They have to win.
They have to win more.
They have to win 2 more best of 5s after that. Yeah.
I'm struggling. I think Vitality might win. So
Really?
I'm not going to say they are going to win, but I think that they have a chance. I think it's going to be 3-2.
Why?
I think this could go to 5 games as well.
Why Vitality? Because I think that their lack of style and reliance on comfort is the main reason why.
I just think their volatility and inconsistency might play well into Fnatic.
I mean,
And
it didn't last time they played.
No, but I think
they
that
fought
in
a
a
bunch
best
of
of
Fnatic
5,
won.
in a best of 5, if they found what's working in a meta where Irelia and stuff like this is meta and available.
relentlessly swearing this entire episode.
Yeah,
and just
okay.
I haven't sworn once.
yeah, it's good. You're good at your job.
I think also Fnatic are their own worst enemies, and until they can show this version of Fnatic, once I see them in the best of 5 and I watch this Vitality series and it's like you say, 100% Fnatic win and it's decisive, then I'll moving on to the next series, I'll have a lot more faith in Fnatic in best of 5s itself. I will still predict Fnatic to win the best of 5, and I'll say Fnatic will win this best of 5, probably 3-2 in my eyes, but
You wouldn't
I
be
think
surprised if Vitality got it.
I would also exactly not be surprised where Vitality just, the games are really messy and then they just, I don't know, Fnatic overextend and make a throw, Vitality do the same thing. It's just going to be a lot of back and forth from what I can see. But they've had 2 weeks to prep. Maybe they've, fixed things.
Just double checking. You're on the 3-0 train. You're a firm believer.
I'm 3-0 Fnatic. I think that Vitality just won't be able to fix their stuff. And I think that if they lose game 1, they don't have any adaptation. That's just kind of my opinion. Like, maybe I'm wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong.
I would
but,
disagree,
like,
and I think that most of their adaptation comes through mid, where you can put leader
didn't
on
you
Bryce.
literally start your point
hold
with
on.
they've played 4 unique champions in their 4 loss
Yeah,
streak?
exactly.
And then,
They're so volatile and inconsistent, especially in the champ pools, right? So just the only point I would say there is like you can put leader on Ryze and then self-made on Lee Sin, for example.
Sure.
But then you can also put self-made on Evelyn and then leader on like Irelia. So you can have like these wacky mid-jungle combos,
yeah, no,
which is
I
where
agree with you.
yeah, the West is where the champ pools come from.
So-
I guess that's the only thing.
I'm going to say now, we'll put a pin in it. We'll wait and see. We'll find out again. Sunday, blood, drama, rivalry.
Yeah,
It's
going to be really fun to
Flippo
watch.
versus self-made.
This is the banger series. This is the tabloid favorite,
Yeah.
whatever. Despite the fact
It's a
that this is
banger.
the undercard, this is the banging undercard. Like the top level matchup is like, fine. It's
So
whatever.
we've got Tricast, Magi 2, us
Yep.
3, and then Medivedi for Fnatic Vitality. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's Quickshot Trouble for Rogue Misfit. So good week of games, good week of cast. It's going to be a
banger
banger.
for
I'm
sure.
on the analyst desk for Fnatic Vitality. Poggers.
Oh, good luck.
I'm on the analyst
Who's
desk
got
for-
a
Wait, I'm on the
post-match?
analyst- I'm on the
100 kills in 5 minutes.
I'm on the analyst desk for Rogue Misfits. I feel like we should swap.
No, I want to do the Fnatic
I
Vitality.
was gonna say if anyone could just shout about people killing each other, surely the
Welcome to my
refined
telestrator.
Best of 5 should be
I
for
can
you.
grow a stash. Give me 2.5 years.
Sure. You just have to let it go, dude.
How
You
much
have to-
time have we got left, Drakos?
Well, we're gonna jump to our next section. We'll do our playoff prediction for the rest of the bracket to get that clickbait, and we'll go there now. And now, it's time to make clickbait.
let's do it.
And also kind of a little bit of analysis. Now, we're going to keep this a little bit tight as we will have a chance to explain our thought processes more in the weeks to come, rather. But we'll go through each person going to define their playoff bracket. A wonderful graphic will appear here for those of you in YouTube land. You guys, if you're at home in podcast land, can also check out Twitter, where we'll be posting the graphics on either LoL Esports or on our respective Twitters if you want to follow along visually. We'll also be using the match names, so maybe like LoL Esports wikis or something for you to follow along. It should be pretty easy though. So
That's really hard.
I can go. I
Then
guess
ask me first.
Yeah, you can go
you're
first.
gonna go first.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm struggling with
Okay,
92
so
Fnatic
round
Vitality.
1, Rogue makes it through.
Okay.
Yep.
G2 will also make it through. So Rogue versus G2 will be the Kings match semifinal. Fnatic will make it through. Fnatic will then, by default, will play against Misfits, who I believe Fnatic will lose to. I think that Misfits will then go on to play Mad Lions. Mad Lions will then defeat Misfits. And then it will be Mad versus G2 again, where I think we will have a Rogue versus G2 final.
Okay. So again, to reclarify, so you think in the winners match, Rogue is going to beat G2?
I do.
Okay. And then
Obviously, without seeing any footage.
yeah. Okay. That's pretty similar to what I had. That's very spicy. I like it. Okay. So
Yeah, I'm taking a bit of a flip on the Misfits Fnatic one.
Yeah.
And I'm also taking a bit of a flip on the Rogue versus G2 one. I'm assuming that Rogue is going to overcome their demons and they're going to solve their mid-game issues. And I think that they'll be able to finally beat G2 in a best of 5.
It's also nice.
I mean, they've already beaten G2.
Because the position that they're in, they don't even have to play Mad again. If they just beat G2, they never have to play Mad again and overcome their demons from the finals.
In theory.
They can just go straight to the finals. And just
but that means that I also
think
think that our world's top 3 will be Rogue, Mad, G2. Those are my top 3.
I think it's pretty fair, and I'd be inclined to agree. I'll go next. So exact same first round. Rogue taking down Misfits.
Okay.
G2 taking down Mad.
Okay.
Fnatic taking down Vitality. Now, I'm more of a basic Betty here, not to use any swears. I think Fnatic are going to beat Misfits then in the subsequent round, and I do expect it to be Rogue versus Fnatic. I'm on the G2 hype train.
Whoa.
Sorry, Rogue versus Mad. Sorry. Okay. Whoa. Wow. I'm making whoever has to make the graphic for this afterward. The graphic's not ready. Afterwards, life hard. So first, Misfits versus Fnatic. Fnatic wins. Then they play Mad. Mad will beat Fnatic.
Okay.
Bam. And then they will play Rogue.
So G2 will defeat
G2
Rogue
will defeat
in
Rogue
the
in the
semifinals.
Kings match.
Got
yes. And then in the lower bracket match, I expect Rogue to beat the Mad Lions and go to finals. So
you and I think G2 Rogue finals.
I think G2 Rogue finals.
But your expectations are a little more cookie cutter.
Yeah, I would say that the only thing that's really standout difference from ours is obviously Rogue versus G2, who's going to win in that winners match.
The Fnatic game.
But then I think Fnatic beat Misfits. I don't have a whole ton of faith.
All right,
in Misfits.
Lamont.
I don't know. I feel like I already predicted G2 to beat Mad Lions earlier on.
No, you didn't.
Yeah,
you
I
did.
said
We
that
did.
they would,
We all did.
You said
win
3-2 Mad Lions.
No, to G2 I said.
No, you said
3-2
Mad Lions.
Actually, you're right.
I said Mad Lions, right?
Yeah, you did say Mad Lions.
said
Okay, good.
3-2 Mad Lions.
Thank God, because I thought I said G2 for some reason, because I wanted to
You can
say Mad
change your
Lions.
mind.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted to make sure that I gave context why I'm changing my mind.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think Rogue will win against Misfits. I think Mad will beat G2.
Okay.
So it's Rogue, Mad in the upper bracket final, and Rogue will win that game, so they'll be in the finals.
Okay.
In the lower bracket, Fnatic will beat Vitality. Then they'll face Misfits, who I think Fnatic will beat.
Okay.
Then they face G2.
And they face G2, and I think G2 will win.
And then it's G2 versus Mad in your scenario.
G2 versus Mad in the finals.
The rematch. No.
Sorry, the rematch, and then Rogue versus G2 in the finals.
So we're all Rogue G2. A lot of us have faith in Rogue. A lot of us do.
So this is what I'll say is that Rogue have consistently gotten better. You know, they've gotten after that first split. If we forget the first split where they didn't make playoffs, they've always made playoffs. They've been consistently improving. I think they've never been outside of top 4 since that first split. I think it was like 3rd, 4th.
I don't know if that's true. I actually think in the first year, I don't remember that.
Maybe
first
it's since
year super
2019.
well.
No, I don't remember.
Wow, it's very hard to predict these players.
Mad Lions have never finished at the top 4. What I wrote it down in the document. Hold on, let's what the document's for. Let's double check.
Wasting our valuable
This
little
is
time
really interesting
here.
playoffs, though. I think every
playoffs-
scenario is very cool to listen to and
Yes.
watch.
Okay, highest placement is 2nd. Okay, so they went 4th, then 5th, then 3rd, and then in last split 2nd after that aforementioned. So not always top 4, but they've been slowly getting better and better. I think when we look at last finals, a lot of people would still be skeptical as like, one thing goes different is that Rogue's game. The Caitlyn game, Rogue
The Rise game, the last game.
the Rogue game, maybe those
I mean, I
games
just
are a
don't
little
think the
overconfident.
thing that I wanted to shift was the idea that they choke. I think that these are just mid-game issues that they have. I don't think that they're sitting there being like, what do we do? What do we do? I don't think that's kind of what's happening with the team.
I don't think that they choke, but I think that Rogue are just consistently getting better. And I think them getting to finals was an indication of that, and
but
not just
the biggest
G2
question will
slumping.
be, can they overcome the issues that have plagued this roster specifically, I think, all year, which is that when they get insurmountable leads, that mid-game decision-making about how to close out the game, what to do when you have these big leads, is something that they have to pay attention to and they need to fix. Otherwise, teams will just keep picking scaling, and then they'll just wait for them to make the mistake, and then they'll outscale them. And that's kind of what Matt did, So
we'll find out. We're believers in the Rogue G2 finals. Let us know at home what you think or what your bracket looks like. If you think that we're completely off on any of these predictions on the matchups, maybe you have a lot of faith in a team that we don't. Maybe you have some secret insider knowledge that we don't, in which case, feel free to share it because we love that.
Oh, I can't wait for Worlds.
I can't wait either. We'll be casting Mad vs. G2 this weekend. Before we go, Vedi wanted 2 minutes for a thing.
yeah, I want to antagonize LCK fans.
Okay, sick.
So basically,
You're so good at this,
I
dude.
will never touch the LPL. Okay, I watched EDG versus FPX. They're gods. Europe will be terrified of those teams because
You're so terrified you can't say the words
exactly.
right.
It's scary. It's scary.
It's pretty scary. I watched those games as well.
Yeah.
We're screwed.
However, LCK, we can take pot shots at them. Now, I've only watched a couple games, but that's all I need, Daniel Drakos, because let me tell you what, if Nongshim is their first seed going to Worlds, it's going to be an easy Worlds. I think T1, they don't know how to draft.
Sure.
They don't know how to play. I think Damwon's decent. But, they've only really earned that respect because they are former world champions and they have some of the best players on their roster in terms of Showmaker and Canyon. But I think that's it from the LCK. I don't know why they have 4. I mean, I know why they have 4 seeds, but should they really have 4 seeds? You know what I'm saying? Good luck LCK. Enjoy 3rd place. I mean, it's going to be tough at your Worlds.
Well, I tweeted something very simple and said, I don't think LCK is going to be a threat, but you just took that.
I just love fueling the fire at Worlds. It's my favorite thing.
So if you could clip that.
Incredible amounts of fuel onto it.
I know, It's just my favorite. I love antagonizing people at Worlds. It's my favorite thing.
I mean... See, I'm ready.
People are going to clip this out so that when LCK smashes in the group stages,
they're going to tweet that to you.
It's going to be, but I love it. It's part of the fun of Worlds
good content.
For me.
Yeah. If you don't make bold predictions, you don't get good content.
Yeah. Like LPL, you're still gods. I can't commit you yet, but I will. Maybe.
I love the progression of EU over the years. We had this brief glimmer of hope where we won MSI, and now it's like, well, NA suck now, so we'll move one up the totem pole.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's screw you, LCK.
Exactly.
And then maybe
one day we
years
can
from
get to
now,
the LPL.
and we'll be even. And even if, honestly, if we just sit here dead even with the LPL, fighting forever with no one super, I will be happy with that.
I'll take that.
That
I'll
will
take
be a
that.
banger. But now we're on the LCK tier. We're climbing it. Like those,
Climbing.
If you ever played OG Mortal, the little ladders in the OG Mortal Kombat.
Think about
as you
how
slowly move up.
offended the LCK is. You're on our tier now, hey? Welcome down here.
Here's the question. Did they go down or did we go up? That's the question on everyone's mind, and we'll leave that one for Worlds. This has been EUphoria Season 8, Episode 10. Playoffs Round 1 coming your way. Friday, it is Misfits versus Rogue. Saturday, G2 versus Mad Lions. Casted by the trio here. Vitality versus Fnatic. The absolute banger Bloodbath by Vedi themselves, I believe. Hell yeah. It's going to be...
TP sucked.
It's going to be fantastic. Into die! I'm looking forward to
Goodbye.
it. Goodbye.